What is up, everybody? It is Alex from Heavy New York, calling from the quarantine zone again, and this time we got Vil from Fuck the Facts. Thank you so much for your time today, man. I appreciate it.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yep, it's great to have you here. We got the brand new album, Pleine Noirceur, or Pleine Noirceur. Sorry for the pronunciation mistakes.
Oh, you got it. You got it.
But it's absolutely awesome. Was the intention of this album being that it was 5 years to just make a direct continuation of Desire Will Rot, or was this almost kind of like a brand new start for Fuck the Facts in a way?
I think it was more like a brand new start because we took a long break after Desire Will Rot. We did some tours, and then we kind of just got back home and figured out what we were going to do next, and we kind of just did nothing for a while. So when we started jamming again, we had no real plans. We just wanted to see if we still wanted to do this and if we were still having fun. And at some point we just started writing and going back to old demos that we had, and it kind of formed into Pleine Noirceur. I don't think we had like a super clear plan even like till the last few months, so it kind of got all together on the go.
So it's fair to say that this was almost like a very organic songwriting process in a way, right?
Yeah, I think so. Like some of those songs we wrote like years ago, like before Desire Will Rot, and it's kind of a big mix of old stuff and new stuff and stuff we actually did in the studio. So it definitely like came together organically. Like I don't think we had like a super clear vision of where we were going with this record. It kind of came together at the very end.
That could be your slogan for this album: all organic metal.
Yeah. It's good. Popular branding nowadays.
Yeah, right. Like in the record, if record stores were as prevalent as they were back then, that would be like a section, like the produce section, all organic. Now, I thought like this album had like a lot of melody and emotion behind it as well. Like I remember Doubt, Fear, Neglect, like opening up with that track really hit you with emotion. But then you have a track like the title track. So like, was there maybe like a lot of emotions that were being felt that all of you were expressing through this album in a way, or being that there was no preconceived idea, it just kind of turned out that way?
Yeah, there's probably some of that. Both those songs are like really like, for me, typical like Topon song, our guitar player. There's a lot of like of old school stuff like effects and a lot of melodies compared to like stuff I write that's a bit more straightforward. So I think it's mainly like the influences that Topon bring into his writing, particularly for those two songs. And I think it's also songs that we wrote while practicing. Those are kind of like our typical like sit down and like dick around and see what happens, and usually those are the songs that turn out the best for us, like compared to like what I do when I sit at home and I just kind of demo everything myself and think about all the guitars, the bass, and the drums, and then I bring it to Topon and we kind of figure it out from there. That process is a bit less organic compared to when we just practice together, and we usually record everything we do every practice and go back to it and try and fix things and arrange it as best we can. So I think these two songs are probably a bit more melodic because Topon had much more of a footprint on them than some of the other songs.
Mm-hmm. Well, I've always thought that with Fuck the Facts, that like your music really captures like a moment. Like that's what I've always thought, is like it's music that captures like a snapshot. And going back to the organic aspect, what we were talking about before. So like, do you find it maybe like when you write these songs that really capture a moment, that maybe it's like a different energy in executing it in a live presence?
Yeah, definitely. Like, writing and recording in the studio is so different than playing something live. Like some of these songs probably work super well on the record and are not going to translate as good live, and it's a bit harder for us to, especially now because we can't really play shows, so it's hard to say like how everything is going to translate live. But it's part of the cool thing of doing shows, especially when you have like a new album, because you don't know. Well, first off, you don't know how people are going to react to it. It's hard to tell. I at least for myself, I have a hard time distancing myself from the album and really, figuring out if it's good or not. I have no clue until it's out, and then I see, reactions, and then I'm like, okay, maybe we did something good, maybe this wasn't as good, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, and for the live stuff, it's such a different energy, right? Because you're more, I feel like in the studio, you're more performance driven in the sense that you want to make, because it's going to stay there forever, right? Once it's recorded, it's never going to get to delete it. It's just there. And live, it's more of an energy thing, a moment thing. It's all about the energy. So yeah, I don't know. Looking forward to trying some of these songs live and just see how they go.
Yeah. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but you came into Fuck the Facts in 2005, right? Around that time period?
Yeah, I think 2005, yeah.
Okay, so when you first joined the band, were you kind of like looking at like, like the earlier material, like, the debut album or maybe like Mullet Fever and being like, okay, this is how I have to play, this is what the band is all about? Or were you kind of allowed to maybe bring a little bit of your own mix into Fuck the Facts when it came to making albums with them?
It's always been like a really open process. That's the funnest part for me creatively in this band. And it's always been like that for the 15 years I've been involved. And I joined the band on guitar, so I obviously wanted to have an input. I was already playing in other bands, and in my main band, the main thing I wanted to do was write songs. So when I joined Fuck the Facts, like we were already, they already had done a decent amount of stuff, for an underground band, and I joined and we went on tour like super. Like I think a few weeks after, so we weren't like in a writing process per se, but we started writing like on the road and figuring things out. So I had an input like immediately because I already had songs that I had written, and I could show to Hope on, and if we thought it was a good thing, like a good song or a good part, then we could use it. I've always felt involved in the creative process with the band, that's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I remember like when you like first joined the band. I mean, I think I was maybe in like elementary or middle school when you first joined the band, but like listening, there is kind of like a distinct difference. I really thought you brought like a lot of flavor into the band, and as well as them being able to maintain the energy that makes Fuck the Facts Fuck the Facts.
I think it's a good fit. Like me and Topon, like I was talking to him. I didn't see them often since the start of the pandemic, but this summer we had the chance to go to a cottage and just hang out and drink beer and talk about music. And I was talking to him about like the relationship that we have, the core that's been the same for the past like 15 years, me, Mel, and Topon. And that's, it's something you don't often get, as a musician, or actually in general in your life. I feel pretty fortunate to play music with a group of people like Mel and Topon, just because that connection is kind of unique. Like I'd have a hard time finding someone like Topon, especially like music writing wise. Like we have a certain connection and everything kind of works really like by itself, so it's pretty awesome.
Yeah. And really, like, being that you have so many albums out now, does it maybe when it comes to like the live shows, does it get harder to put a set list together playing live? Because I know that you guys have a lot of underground fans who have been following Fuck the Facts forever now, and they're always, oh, could you play this deep cut off of this album from 1998 or something?
Yeah, well, we got to keep it interesting, not only for ourselves but for the people, everyone that's been following the band for a while, and it's hard to balance because some people have been following the band for since day one maybe, and other people from when we were on Relapse, or other people just from this last album. So you can't just like, it's hard for us to do like a set that covers like the entire discography. It wouldn't make any sense anyways, I think, for us. And I don't think it would be as fun live. It's cool. Like every now and then we go back to some super old songs, and it's kind of cool. But I think we want to keep it interesting as much as possible, and we don't play that long at all, so we can't go back too much, because we usually play like 30 minutes, like maybe, like often we would play like under 30 minutes, even if we're like doing this, you know, DIY headlining tour. It's pretty rare that we play more than that. Probably going to play a bit more than that next time, but usually, yeah, we try to put on the best show, and finding the songs that work the best. I think it's the same structure as figuring out the flow of an album. It's the same thing. We have to figure out like what's the best structure we can have for a show. And we're a band that like everything's on a click track live. We play the same set every single night. There's very little room for change when it comes to the live show, just because we want to make sure that we can, you know, after like a few weeks of tour, that we're on top of our game and we know everything by heart.
Yeah, and playing for a half hour, I mean, for some bands that really works. Like I consider Fuck the Facts, you know, people want to characterize you as like grindcore. I mean, I've even heard somebody call you guys black metal one time, which I thought was I thought was hilarious. And
yeah,
but
just a bit far-fetched.
Yeah, but I consider you guys to really have like the hardcore etiquette behind what you do. Like, were you influenced by like a lot of the hardcore bands that, you know, play very raw, energetic music and only play for a quick half hours, you know, finish as quick as they stop? Were you influenced by hardcore?
Hardcore? I don't know. Like, admittedly, I don't know much about hardcore. It's I wouldn't say it's like a style that particularly influenced me, at least. I think we were always a bit more into like not underground, but like old school death metal and just like shitty grindcore. I think it's more like of a shitty grindcore influence, and also just realizing, you know, playing shows, it's really like when you're young and you're playing your first metal band and shit, and you go and you're like, all right, we got a show, so we got to play like every single song we've ever written and then add our favorite covers. And then you play for like an hour and a half, and it doesn't make any fucking sense, because, you know, there's a lot of other bands. There's also kind of an etiquette thing. Like we like shorter shows in general. Like a 3-band bill is like, I find is amazing, especially for our style of music, because it's hard to sit and listen to like 6 bands play for, you know, 35, 40 minutes. I find it draining, and I'm not sure if it serves the bands well in general to do that kind of stuff. But
yeah, it kind of fucks over the headliner.
It's mostly like a grindcore punk-ish vibe more than a hardcore attitude.
Yeah,
not saying there's nothing wrong with hardcore. I'm just not as I don't know much about it, really.
Yeah, that's fair enough. And like, do you feel that like with having that punk rock element, do you feel like that's more of a sound or more of an attitude? Like, I've heard so many people categorize everything as punk rock, and like I've heard bands that sound nothing like each other be called punk rock. Like, do you feel like it's more of an image, it's more of an attitude, it's more of an aesthetic? Like, to you, what makes punk?
I think it depends for each band. For a lot of bands, it's going to be like pure aesthetics, and other bands going to be more the ethics. And I think for us, it's definitely even grindcore. I think the tag sticks maybe more because of our ethics and background than what we actually do, even though it is grindcore influence, and it's still probably my my favorite style of music. But yeah, I think for us, it's more a way of seeing things when it comes to like just how DIY this band actually is and still is. It's still mind-blowing to me, because it ends up being a lot of work, but I think it pays off. And just creatively as well, we just do what we want to do. You know, it's kind of, we don't have any boundaries, but obviously we still stick to a certain style, and the more we grow old, I think the more we're a bit more focused in what we do. But yeah, I think for us, we're not that much of an aesthetic band, I would say. Like, I mean, I'm not talking about like the artwork and stuff like that, but just like us personally, like in band pictures are silly. We have a hard time every time we do stuff like that. We're not really good for that. We're not that great on like social media either. Kind of a out of date, a bit underground pseudo grindcore band. So
I think that's what.
yeah, I think it's more an ethic thing.
Yeah, I think that's what makes people interested in you guys too, because like I feel like by not having like a presence like so many other bands have, I think the very idea that like you guys are underground and DIY encourages people to try to find who you are in a way.
Yeah, there's probably some of that, and we know we have to work on that kind of stuff, you know, to a certain extent, to push our band a bit more. You know, there's plenty of resources for us to promote, you know, an album, an EP, or shows, but we've never been like that great at it compared to a lot of other bands. And I think like dudes in Exhume, like they're really good at it. They're always doing something, you know, either directly with their band or, you know, at least related to it. You know, they're always drawing people into their universe, and I think they do it like really, really well. But we're not there yet. But we're actually thinking, we got a few ideas for this album, like doing like a live Q&A and stuff like that. Stuff we've never done, but you know, why not? I think it's cool, especially during the pandemic. You know, we can't play shows, we can't connect to anybody, so I think we need to do a bit more, at least in that department.
Definitely, and I think it'll be great to, you know, sort of connect with the fans and to, you know, give them, especially because your music has a lot of pissed off energy that a lot of people are feeling on the inside right now with everything happening. I think people could use you guys more than ever.
We wish we could play shows, but we were supposed to hit the States in May, and like everything's getting pushed back, so it sucks. But yeah, it'll have to be over the internet for some time.
Yeah, well, mark my words though, when all this shit is over, we're gonna enter like a new aged renaissance, I feel.
I hope so, because it really depends on, because I don't know how it is in the state. Well, it's a huge country there, but I don't know how it is in New York particularly. But I know here there's, you know, some venues are starting to close, and you know, it's going to be hard when it restarts. But I think, yeah, bands are going to want to tour. The main question for me is, how are we going to tour? Because, you know, we used to just, you go on the road, you sleep at, you know, some fucking people you don't even know, you just sleep at their houses. Like, how are we going to be able to do that now in a like post-pandemic world where, you know, you don't even know who's gonna get the vaccine and shit like that? Like, I really don't know how we're gonna be able to tour like we did before. Like, are like underground bands gonna have to like really,
I'm sure a lot of
get a hotel room? Like,
I'm sure a lot of national touring bands, after 9/11, were scared to fly to do international tours. So I think it's like just gonna be, there's gonna be like fear that plagues us for a while after the virus is eradicated. Then, you know, anxiety and fear and paranoia will be the plague. But then I think just in the end, as we progress, and you know, look at the Paris attacks in 2015 after that happened. I mean, people were scared to go inside of a venue. I couldn't even go inside a venue with a hoodie on without people like getting nervous. So it was. So I just think in the end, you know, all this, everything happens for a reason, and I think that we're going to enter a great era of music. And you guys are super DIY.
Yeah, we always adapt, so.
Yeah, and you guys are super DIY. I say just play in the middle of the freaking Times Square if you come to New York.
I'm sure it's gonna get back to, you know, a certain level of normalcy. I'm just wondering, to what extent, and what it's going to imply for people that go to shows, venues, touring bands, et cetera, et cetera. I'm curious. I'm not saying it's going to be super. It's going to be like practically impossible, but I'm more curious to see the structure of all, how tours are going to look like.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I'm more excited to see it than anxious.
Yeah, for sure.
Yep. And the final question I wanted to ask you is back to the songwriting aspect of Fuck the Facts. At what point do you know that the song is finished? Because I feel like I know that's a difficult question for every artist of all styles to answer, but for you, like with Fuck the Facts, your music captures a moment, it's hard hitting. How do you know when to say it's done? We don't need to work on it anymore.
When Topon sends me the master.
Oh, come on, you can do that.
That's the old. Yeah, for sure, man. Because Topon's gonna keep working on stuff till the very, very, very end. He's gonna send me like, okay, I got this idea. Is this good or am I going crazy? And I'm either gonna say this is good or no, this doesn't make it. Stick to what we had. We're good. Because even like we did all the drums, we started doing, I think, guitars even, and then we were like, okay, we need to go back and got an idea for this. And then we mic'd the drums again and did something completely different. Like there's multiple sessions, like drum sessions on that album, and the drums sound completely different. And once everything is tracked, we're gonna keep trying stuff, adding leads, solos, just trying ideas. Like why it's not done because you've tracked everything. We're not even like, we do a pre-production with everything before we go into the studio and track the actual album. And even then we keep working on songs and ideas till the very, very end, because Topon's in control of the whole process, right? He's the producer. He mixes the album and masters the album, and so if he has an idea, he can just go in and try it. So usually it's done when Topon is like, all right, like started mastering, this is it. It's like, okay.
All right.
It's a double-edged sword. It's cool, but you have to learn how to just stop yourself from going back to certain songs, certain parts. But at the same time, I think that's what makes our writing process and recording process a bit unique and permits us to do an album like Pleine Noirceur.
Yeah, I feel like you have control over your own chaos and your own madness, which is very,
yeah, for sure. That's
you don't want to get lost in your own art.
That's the best part. Yeah. No, that's it. It's sometimes I know when because every time you do an album, you learn a bunch of different lessons, right? Like you have to, or you're gonna keep doing the same mistakes. But I remember when we did like Stigmata High Five, we were tracking Montreal, and then we would drive back to Mel's parents' place not too far from Montreal, and we would sit down, like grab a beer, and he would like grab the right speaker and I would grab the left speaker. And like every time there was like a small thing not working, we'd be like, all right, got to do this again. And needless to say, we don't do any of that anymore. We just kind of, sounds good. It's not perfect, doesn't really matter, but if it sounds good, we're fine. Like we're not looking for perfection, that's for sure. Just looking for good songs, I think.
Yeah, and that's the whole point of it. And there's no such thing as a perfect song either. I can think of all the classic songs.
But even like performance-wise.
Yeah. Again, all organic metal.
As much as possible.
So before we go, I want to thank you so much for your time today. Really enjoyed this discussion. Is there just anything else with Fuck the Facts that you would like to promote in terms of maybe some live stream performances to hold us over, or new merch or anything like that?
Well, we want to do some kind of stream. It's not going to be like a performance stream because we're not set up for that at all, and we haven't practiced since March, so that's not going to happen. but we're definitely going to try and do Q&A, and we would like to listen to the whole album with all the bonus tracks as well. So we'll try and do something like that. I want to do that before, like, in the next few weeks. Don't have a date yet, but going to try and set that up as soon as possible. Other than that, just check out the band on fuckthefacts.com. You can check it on our Bandcamp as well. I think the album is there. The album's on YouTube as well. And if you want to support us, then you can buy digital copies, cassettes, CD, anything you want, really. We got a whole bunch of crap on that website. So yeah, that's pretty much it. And thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much, everybody. We are here with Bill of Fuck the Facts, Pleine Noirceur, out now. Be sure to pick it up. This is Alex from Heavy New York.